Welcome to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast. Sit back and listen to interviews, discussion about books, and anything else literary. There's always something or someone new on the show. Good evening, listeners. Welcome to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast. Behind the books, honest voices, real stories. I'm Amy Shannon, and each episode brings you heartfelt conversations with the storytellers behind the stories, authors, publishers, and creatives who shape the literary world. And every second Sunday, join me for story time, where tales come alive for all ages. Let's turn the page together. Tonight we have an author with us. Thank you for joining us, and will you please introduce yourself and let people know how to contact you or find your books?
Hi, my name is Lena Gibson. I'm a Canadian indie author. You can find me at Lena Gibson 15 on Instagram. I'm just my name, Lena Gibson, on Facebook. And my website is lenagibsonauthor.ca.
Great. Thank you. So, why don't you tell us about your book?
Well, my most recent book is The Right Time, Back to the 80s. It's a women's fiction or romance time slip story about someone who is living in the near future or even the present and is very overwhelmed by what's going on. She feels alone. She's escaping an abusive situation, and a new neighbor suggests a therapist who she goes to. It seems very unconventional. She leaves, makes a wish, and ends up back in 1985.
Oh, wow. To be in 1985 again. I did like your cover and how it was kind of like, mimic of Back to the Future. I really did like that. It really drew my attention. And then I think about, in the 80s, geez, I was a teenager.
So was I. I was 13 years old in 1985.
Oh. It just kind of, it brings you back. It's like, would you really want to go back to wearing big hair and parachute pants and
no, not really.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed visiting while writing. And It was really fun to go back there.
Yeah, it's fun as long as you don't have to go relive it again. Yeah, sure.
Exactly. Well, and there's all this nostalgia around the 80s now. And it's become a thing, like, simpler times, it's so wonderful. So I wanted to play with that and jump back to that time and show they're just different problems, but they were still there. And that you yourself, you have your own baggage. It doesn't matter where you are.
Yeah, and at a point before that, they would think that the 50s was the simpler time.
Right.
The 1950s, and we're talking about the 1980s, and I'm only saying that because some people be like, okay, what does that have to do with anything?
A few years ago, Taylor Jenkins Reid won the Goodreads Choice Awards for historical fiction for Malibu Rising, set in the 80s, and I was like, that's not historical fiction. But of course it is.
Yeah.
But it was me, like, wow. By the time I grew up, it's historical fiction.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you turn on the oldies stations and they're playing the 80s music. And I'm like, oh, man.
And high school kids have 80s themed dances like we had 50s or 60s themed dances.
Yeah. And then when they do it, they have no idea what they are, what it really means. But I found that, I read your story and it was like, I was kind of brought back and I was thinking, why would she want to go there? But, as a teenager, you're kind of in your, like, everything is, going wrong and, that teenage angst. I have no friends. I don't do this. I don't do that. But yet you're wearing, Madonna gloves and dressing like Michael Jackson and, really
teasing your hair and spraying it up.
I know so much that you couldn't move it. It didn't move. Oh, yeah. Big hair, big glasses. Big glasses are coming back now, but I don't think I'm ready to go back to wearing big glasses.
Make sure I'm there either.
So that kind of inspired you to, thinking about the 80s, but um, you've written other books, right?
Yes, I have. This will be my 8th.
Nice. Very nice. And when did you start writing?
I think I started really in 1998. It was the summer I got married the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember distinctly when it was. And I was trying to find something I wanted to read, but I was caught up basically on all my favorite authors. I mostly read fantasy in those days with,
Mm-hmm.
a smattering of sort of everything else.
Yeah.
But I was finished. I was caught up. I couldn't find anything that summer. And I was like, maybe I could write something. And because I'm a teacher, I have summers off. And so every summer I would pick up my project, and it was just something for fun for me. And I met up with a friend in 2017 and she said, "Oh, how's your writing going?" Because I hadn't seen her in about 10 years. And I thought, well, it's not really going anywhere right now. I should do something about that.
Yeah.
And so I did. And that's when I started taking writing classes and going to a local writers conference and trying to carve out a little bit of time every day to write, not just in the summer.
No, that's great. What do you teach?
I teach elementary school. I have a combined 4-5 class. I'm the most senior teacher in the school now, so I get to pick whatever I want. And that is what I want. I love being able to take the grade 4s and keep them as grade 5s as well.
Oh, that is really great. I loved it when I was in elementary school, and if I had to sit the same teacher for my next grade up, a teacher I loved, that I had that a couple times, and that was just amazing because you're used to the teacher, you like the teacher, and um, and it's an honor to have you on here as an author, but also as a teacher.
Oh, thank you.
Because I think that is one of the most important jobs in the world, is to be a teacher.
Oh, thank you. For a long time, it was everything. I poured heart and soul into it, and I felt like I made a difference, and I love doing it. And I still do, but the outside of the classroom stuff has started to chip away at me for a long time, like some of the parents that aren't supportive and all the meetings and all the extra expectations that aren't just teaching anymore. And I needed something for me.
Yeah.
And that was the other reason I turned to writing, as a way to have something that was mine and creative and would last even longer, even if it's just a few people who might have my stories.
Right, but whatever you have in your head, you're putting on paper. So
I am. And it's also a form of therapy. There's a lot of sort of growing up trauma it's like you throw it in a snow globe and shake it up and see how it comes out differently. But there's pieces of truth in there.
I totally agree with that. I mean, I just recently switched from writing various types of novels, crime dramas. I did a lot with private investigators, and then a couple years ago I was writing a paranormal short story, and I wrote it, and I've never written anything that happened in my hometown. So I decided to do that, and then I named the character after my late grandmother, who I just loved. She lived to be 101, and she was my best friend. So the character ended up being a historian, so I had some research to do, and then that kind of opened up, I love history, so local history, world history, family history. I think there's a lot that we can learn from that, and not everybody learns from the past. But then I wrote a book about how my local town became what it became, and then I wrote some other stuff. And my first children's book that I published, I used to write stories to read to my sons when they were little, because they liked having themselves as main characters.
Yeah.
And then I just switched over. I just started working on research for a new historical nonfiction book locally. I've been writing articles for the Historical Society, and basically that makes me considered a local historian. So I really love that.
That's
And
amazing.
and it's a big change from what I was writing, and I'll still write other stuff, but it's like I found something. It's like, that's why I do what I do for authors. I,
Well, it's much
I,
appreciated.
I love helping authors, and I, sometimes, when I'm doing it and they have, um, they want promotions or some other things that I can do for them. Sometimes I'm an editor as well, and I always work within their budget, which not many people actually do that. So, because I know what it's like not to be able to afford the high prices of, stuff in the
Everything.
literary. Yeah, everything is high
Yeah.
price. So I'm like, tell me your budget and I'll work within that, and this is what I can do for you. So I,
And that's amazing, and I appreciate it.
I love doing that. And I always get a lot of authors who are like, oh, thank you. And because sometimes they're embarrassed that they don't have a lot of money, or that they're disabled and they're having financial problems. I know all that. I have the same stuff. Uh, and I know what it's like not to be able to afford a professional editor. Um, and I was lucky to have other people read it for me and tell me the truth and point out mistakes. So, but
And that's hard to find someone who really will help a beginning author or somebody new or not widely published.
oh
Most
yeah,
people will say they'll read it, but then they don't.
yeah,
And you can't grow without feedback.
I've asked people, I'm like, oh, could you read this for me? Something I wrote. And sure. And it's been years since the book's been published, and other books have been published, and, no response on it. And then other times I get people that will, if it's a short enough book, well, yeah, I'll read it and see what I say. But, it doesn't matter. I spend more time promoting other authors than myself, and I don't mind. I like it. But I also make sure I take that time for myself, where I'm writing or, doing some craft projects, which is something that I just started recently, and I'm just kind of having fun.
I kind of gave up my craft projects. I was a cross stitcher and a crocheter, but now I spend all my time writing or reading. And I really like my publisher and the sense of community we have within it, that we
Yeah.
read and review each other's books. And so I spend time that some of my craft time got diverted there.
Right. But no, I think that's great though. Yeah, you have a great community of authors with your publisher. And I just think that, you know, there should be more publishers like that. I know it's a lot of work, but still it's, where the authors that are being representative within a publisher, that they have some type of community. I mean, we have a author community, and there's very different levels of that. I mean, some authors think, oh, well, I'm in competition with every single person who ever wrote a book. And then there are authors that, they're starting out and they're not sure. And sometimes they make the wrong decisions, like spell their name close to famous authors.
Yeah, on purpose.
Yeah, I had that one time. I wanted to see what the latest Stephen King book was, and I saw it, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not how he spells his name.
Mm.
And he writes, and this guy, he doesn't, he spells it Steven,
Right.
and I almost bought it because he was in the same genre, but
Right.
obviously it was on purpose, because they were like right side by side. And
Right.
it's like,
That's
okay.
awful.
Yeah. And I'm like, this is
I think that we're way better off helping each other get somewhere. That is not a competition. We're boosting each other.
exactly.
And that's how Black Rose Writing, my publisher, does it. And I'm part of an online writing academy, the Creative Academy for Writers out of Vancouver, Canada, that is also like that. And you can turn to people and say, can you read this 10 pages? Or will you promote my book and I'll promote your book? And please, everybo's helping everyone all the time.
That's great. Yeah, that is really great to have something like that. And I've known, and it's actually there's other type of publishers that I hear the same kind of thing. And those are the ones that are like, connect with me and say, hey, I've got these authors. Would you read their books? And, it's those ones that are all about like really the community of authors and things like that. So I definitely, I always keep my ear out, and there's always ones if somebody wants to, I keep a list in my head of the ones that if somebody wanted to send their book to something and it fit, and because I know how these publishers work, I'm like, oh, try this one, see what happens. So, if you want to, you can read a small excerpt if you wanted to.
Okay, I would like to. I'm going to read something from this new one, The Right Time, Back to the 80s. So this is from chapter 4.
Okay.
Andy awoke twice that night, a strangled scream escaping each time. Vague flashes of Dylan's face lingered as she lay in the strange dark room, gasping while his dream words lingered. You're nothing, and nobody cares about you. The anger in his face sent chills through her, and she made a decision. She wouldn't continue like this, frightened of her nightmares. She would call Dr. Fossey on Monday to set up an appointment. Andy hated talking about her past, but she suspected getting to the bottom of her feelings now would show them rooted in her childhood. That's when things had first gone awry, and she'd first felt alone. She spent the weekend unpacking her few belongings from the half-dozen boxes she'd brought. When she examined the house, she no longer saw a stinky, run-down rental, but a place where she could get her life back in order, a life free of Dylan. With her personal space in order, she attacked the never-ending mountain of schoolwork that needed marking. Plus, the new, complicated report card program took a level of tech savvy which made her want to scream. All the menus had moved, and squinting at the size 8 font made her eyes ache. Monday morning, Andy drove to work as usual, fighting gridlock traffic. Though her school was 20 minutes away, the drive took over an hour and left her a soggy wreck, as she was always only one accident away from arriving late. Once inside the building, she found the ordinary and predictable routine of school soothing to her overwrought nerves and battered pride from her failed marriage. While she excelled at pretending to be fine from living a double life as long as she could remember, a tightness remained in her sternum and her jaw. Though she'd warned Dylan not to come to her work, she expected him to ignore her wishes. It was just a matter of time. Nobody at work would understand. To her co-workers, Dylan Marks was a catch, someone to be admired for his handsome face, his charm, and his political clout. She got through Monday on adrenaline, and at lunch she called Dr. Fossey's office and made an appointment for the following Monday after work. She also booked an appointment with her new lawyer for after school, next Tuesday, the first available time. With the appointments booked, the rest of the day became a little easier, and by Thursday, Andy took breaths without feeling like a car had parked on her chest. Plus, after school, she had plans she was looking forward to. And it's just small, just going to stop there.
That is very intriguing. So I'm sure that our listeners are going to be like ready to pick up that book because, if you remember the 80s and you want to hear more about Andy's story, this is definitely the book to pick up and read.
Well, and I probably should have read more, but
no, that's okay.
I want to leave it
yeah,
pick it up and find it.
Exactly. get it, and this is what's going to happen, and read it. And if you read it, please write a review. Reviews are very important to authors. So the character Andy, what made you, I don't know, how did
she come about?
Yeah, exactly. How did she come about?
Let's see. Her name came from one of my favorite movies in the 80s, was where I started. So there's lots of pieces that combine. My brain is strange.
Okay.
So her name, Andy, is the name of Andy, Molly Ringwald's character in Pretty in Pink.
Oh, yes.
And it was one of my favorite movies in about 1985, 1986.
Yep.
And my sister and I got dropped off at the movie theater for one of the first times by ourselves to go to a movie, and we had to stay and watch it twice because my mom was going to the only other movie theater across town with her boyfriend to see a long movie, to see Out of Africa. Oh. And so she couldn't come back and pick us up, so we just had to stay. And we watched it twice back to back in the theater. And so that was part of it and I've rewatched it many times. But that was her name, Andy. But I also read a book by Leigh Bardugo called The Ninth House. And there was a character named Alex, but her real name was Galaxy. And I loved that idea of having a really unexpected real name to go with a nickname. And so I play with that in this book, that there's people who call her Andretti and Andromeda or Andrea, but her name is Andy. So that was where her name came from. And when I was looking at putting someone backward into the 80s, I just randomly picked 1985 and thought, what is happening? Because that's the middle of the 80s.
Yep.
I thought, what is happening there? And so I looked and saw that was the year that Back to the Future came out. And I was like, this is the reason. This has to be 1985. And again, I just played with that through the book about Back to the Future and have it. I wanted to have all those 80s movies that I loved so much be part of the story, not just there.
Yeah.
And she worked at a video store because I worked at video stores.
Yeah. Video stores where people used to go in and they would rent a movie on VHS, and then it went to DVD, and then they all pretty much closed up.
But there was this browsing that's different in person than just picking something where you're streaming a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
You pick it up and you read the back and, wander around, and is this the one? And it's a little bit more like going to a library.
Yeah, and looking at the big, huge posters they'd have about, Arnold Schwarzenegger or even with Back to the Future, all those things. It was just part of it. And then, like you said, being able to go to the movie theater without your parent, that was like a big thing.
Well, exactly. The nearest movie theater was an hour away from where we lived. And so we didn't go very often. And if it took an hour to get there, and we went grocery shopping in that town almost every Saturday, but you weren't going to stay with your groceries and go to a movie.
Right.
And it was and that was when, you would have to call in by phone to the movie listings and find out what was playing.
Yep.
And we didn't do that very often. So coming to town, you drove past the theater and you're looking to see what plays.
Yeah.
And, occasionally you could convince someone to bring you the hour back the next day to watch it.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is a great conversation with you. And I really thank you for being on the show. I really am honored that you came on here. And if you have, anytime in the future you have other books you want to talk about, I would gladly have you back on the show.
Well, thank you. I have a new book about every 6 months, so
great.
I'd like to take you up on that.
Sounds good. So it's the end of another great conversation. Thank you for being on the show, and thank you, audience, for listening. If you wish for you or your book to be on the show, go to amysbookshelfreviews.com/podcast. Schedule your pre-recording. Please follow this podcast on Spotify. I'm Amy Shannon. Be safe, be well, and always be kind. Tune in here again next week for another tantalizing discussion. Thank you for listening to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast.